The start of the 2024 season for Week 1 was the lowest amount of passing touchdowns that have been thrown in a Week 1 in the past 10 years. So clearly there's some sort of issue, right? Well, this stat kind of made me think of kind of why this might be occurring, and I think there's a lot of reasons why. Number one, the preseason is no longer a thing. So new guys on new teams, everyone having to be in shape, getting into just the rhythm of maybe a new offense. The preseason was kind of for that, and now that that's basically irrelevant with there being one less preseason game and just the majority of teams not really utilizing the preseason for that kind of stuff at all, more so just, hey, who's the last guys on my roster? It creates some, obviously, loose Week 1 performances, for lack of a better term. Number two, I think the NFL has just changed a lot, and they are heavily enforcing a lot of their penalties. Specifically, the biggest one being a lot on O-linemen. The previous talk, beforehand was how unfair it was for defenses because tackles can be so far back. Well, the league tried to make it a point of emphasis to call penalties on that, which is emphasizing their, quote, proper tackle play, meaning that offensive tackles are being evaluated and being looked at, hey, is their helmet aligned with at least the belt line of their center to where they can avoid being flagged? And they were being pretty strict about it. And I think with social media, every single year, you're going to see a new extreme point of emphasis that will be called very early and tried to be consistent on, and is going to affect a lot of early season games, which you might not think have a big impact, but every single game in the NFL matters. It could be the difference between a team getting in the playoffs and not getting in the playoffs if they don't have that kind of experience with a certain penalty being called a ton. The number two reason that I just brought up, combined with, I think, a front office and an overall market problem, and while this is probably going to change, obviously, because of my first point in terms of preseason, I think this one has the longest staying power and is the biggest reason why we might see just major flops, potentially, in terms of expectations for teams, and that is what I call the QB problem. And number three is related to team construction. The NFL has changed a lot and gone heavily in favor of, obviously, offenses, but more specifically with quarterbacks, and commanding the charge for their team, and wide receivers have been following suit. And when I say charge, I mean both in terms of leading and all eyes on them, as they always were, but even more, but also the charge in cost. There are 14 quarterbacks that make up almost 20% of a team's salary cap at signing. The top 18 highest percentage of team cap, this is when the salary cap was introduced back in 1994. So the top 18 highest percent of team salary cap at signing for quarterbacks are all within the past 4 years, back to 2020. The ones in the top 25 in terms of just the highest cap percentage by quarterback for a team all time, by the way. So when I say all time, I mean, like I said, going back to 94. The only ones that in the top 25 are not from this recent era include ones that you can explain. Brett Favre, who in 1997, after winning a Super Bowl, was at 19%. When he won the Super Bowl, he was only at 11% of the team's cap. He never won another chip and got back to the conference championship game twice in 11 years. 2018 Aaron Rodgers was at 18.9%. He won MVPs, obviously was very worth it, but didn't make the Super Bowl. And they had a top 10 offense 2 times in 5 years. And one of them was they were the 10th best offense for the 5 years that he had his contract. 2005, Carson Palmer, also at 18.9%. 2 playoff appearances, not a single playoff win, 2 seasons of 4 wins during that contract period due to injuries. 1997, Mark Brunell, former Jaguars quarterback, got 18.4%. He made the playoffs for the first 3 years and got farther each year, but Mark's average passer rating in the playoffs for their 3 playoff runs was 65, which the average passer rating in 1997 to 1999, the time where he made those playoff runs, was around 80. So, yes, 65 is obviously bad to today's standards, and while quarterback ratings on average have gone up, it was still bad for 1997 through 99 as well. He also had 2 interceptions and a 55 passer rating in the AFC Championship game in 1999. So clearly that money did not necessarily live up to what they expected. And the other last one for guys that are in the top 25 but are not on current deals in terms of the highest percentage of cap space taken up by a quarterback is Big Ben in 2019, which I don't even really need to explain because you can obviously know what happened there. The only other two that you could say maybe go against the point I'm trying to make is Troy Aikman in 1999, where he had 18%, and it was a 6-year deal, but he retired after the 2000 season due to back problems, but clearly that contract did not live up to what they expected. And 1997 Steve Young, who also retired after injuries in 1999. So all of those guys that I just mentioned are people that were very, very high in terms of how much cap they took up for a team. None of them won a Super Bowl after signing this deal, and none of them really had the success you would expect by giving a quarterback that kind of deal. So I would assume the goal for these contracts is to win a Super Bowl. That's the goal for every team, but if you're paying a quarterback that much money, the goal is obviously to win a Super Bowl and that you believe that quarterback can do so, which is why you pay them that contract. I feel like that's pretty fair to say. So let's look at the past Super Bowls and the quarterbacks that have won them. You either have, these are 2 exceptions in terms of my point of explaining the quarterback problem. You either have a generational quarterback with at least a good enough to a great coaching staff and defense around them who will be remembered for decades. Patrick Mahomes, who's 8th right now, by the way, in terms of cap percentage. So he's kind of an outlier for sure. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, those kind of guys. Not saying that they will 100% win in terms of the current people, but Josh Allen, right now, the team looks great, and they took kind of the hit in terms of they had to lose a lot of guys because of Allen's contract, and he's making them show that he can do it. But other guys like Burrow, who I guess is only great in December right now, or January, maybe Lamar, those guys are trying to be that. But right now, for the current day, it's really only been Mahomes. For Brady and Manning, Brady took less money for the team's sake all the time. His average, in terms of the average amount of cap space that he took up just from his one contract, is less than 1% higher than Baker Mayfield right now for his Buccaneers contract. That's the average in terms of the percent Tom Brady took. It's basically the same as Baker right now. And Peyton Manning, when he got his deal with the Broncos, had the big injury risk. And he was still around 16%, which is around Derek Carr right now, but a little bit lower. And when he signed the deal with the Colts, it was massive, huge deal. Didn't have the system. I mean, he obviously was winning, but if I were to show you his stats and everything, you would have thought that Peyton Manning maybe would have won more than 2 Super Bowls, only one of them with the Colts after signing the massive deal that he signed. Rodgers, you could add in as the other asterisk. He signed in the middle of the year in 2008, which was his first season, and won in 2011. So the contract he got when he won his Super Bowl was not a top-tier contract, and he never won a Super Bowl since. Obviously, that was some bad luck, but Rodgers' deal that he had signed, for context in terms of today's, contracts, would be similar to Geno Smith, who was also not in the top tier. Baker, Carr, and Geno are the contracts that we are comparing to Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. That is how much these quarterback contracts have changed. But you can get away with it, like I said, if you have a generational quarterback, or B, a greatly built team with a real good to capable, may sometimes great in the moment quarterback who is not on a top tier deal. Let me explain and emphasize, not on a top tier deal. And there are plenty of examples. Matthew Stafford, his deal that he got was after his team won the Super Bowl, and the deal that he was on when they won the Super Bowl, while yes, it was a good amount of money, it was not the same as what we are seeing in terms of one of the top 20 highest percentage in terms of taking up a team's cap. Nick Foles was a backup, stepped in, great run, won a Super Bowl. Eli Manning, 2 Super Bowls. One of them, he was at 13% of his team's cap, which is Baker Mayfield right now. The other one was 11%, which is Geno Smith right now. Russell Wilson, on his rookie deal, when he was winning and won a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco, he had the same percentage of his team's cap as a first-round rookie deal right now, which is around 4%. Drew Brees in 2006. He got a deal in 2006. He won in 2009. Obviously, with Drew Brees, he was a guy that was drafted by the Chargers. They moved on from him. He wasn't some guaranteed, yes, this is going to be the next best quarterback in the NFL. But Saints took a chance, got a great one there, and he won a Super Bowl, his only Super Bowl in 2009. And for context, the deal that he got when he was, or the deal that he was on when he won his Super Bowl, is the same as Case Keenum after his Vikings stint and his Vikings great run. The Broncos gave Case Keenum a contract to see if he was for real. It was the same amount in terms of percentage of a team's cap that Drew Brees was when he won a Super Bowl. Big Ben, 2005 Super Bowl, same as current Gardner Minshew deal. It's the same in terms of percentage of a team's cap. 2008 Super Bowl was his first year into his new deal, which it did not fully affect the team yet in terms of the deal didn't sit to where they lost players because they had to pay Big Ben so much money. So he ended up luckily being able to sneak one in before his deal actually got through. After that, never won a Super Bowl. And the only other one is Brad Johnson in 2002 for Tampa Bay, of which the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, obviously because of their defense, but also because the opposing quarterback threw 5 interceptions. Has the total increase in quarterback percentage of cap led to other positions maybe just being fine with them, hey, quarterback goes up, everything else goes down, meaning it equals out? Aside from running back, no, that's not the case at all. The majority of the highest cap percentage for, let's say, current players in terms of, hey, this is the percentage of cap that we've spent on these positions throughout the years. Keep in mind, this isn't just the most money. This is a percentage. Percentages you can compare to generations. You can do that. So when I'm comparing these quarterback percentage contracts, it's not the total amount. It's how much did they take up a team's cap. The majority of the highest all-time cap percentages for positions in terms of current guys are wide receivers. They've followed suit, tight ends, edge rushers, offensive line, cornerbacks. All of those are at the top. So it's not like quarterbacks are going up and every other position is going down. You have 6 different other positions that are all also extremely high at the top because the quarterback needs a guy to throw to, which is your wide receivers and tight ends. But we also want to get to the quarterback, so we need an edge rusher. Well, if they want to get to us, we need to protect our quarterback, so we need an offensive tackle. Well, if they have all these great receivers, we need someone to stop them, so we need a corner, so let's go pay a corner. All of these key positions are getting raised up as well. Running back is kind of the only one that has been much lower, which is true, but the amount that quarterbacks have risen in terms of how much they've increased does not equal the same amount that running backs have decreased. That is not the same. Running backs and quarterbacks were not that far off back then. Now it's not even close, and everything else is also rising, and running backs have really been the only major thing that's decreased, aside from linebackers a tiny bit. But it does not equal the increase in quarterback. So with there being obviously an increase in general average talent, for sure, the average third-round pick today is better than the average third-round pick 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, yes. Tell me this. Will all 18 of the aforementioned deals that I mentioned in terms of the top 18 highest percentage of quarterback cap space taken up of all time, all of them are current, will all 18 of these deals pay off? Meaning a Super Bowl or damn near close to it, or at least great career / Super Bowl appearances. Will all of them equal that? No, they won't. At all. The minority, in fact, will pay off. Social media has led fans to both quickly denounce and or promote players faster than ever, and teams have clearly reflected that. And I won't even have it at 18 players. Let's increase it to 20 to include Daniel Jones and Kirk Cousins, who are right outside of my threshold, which both of them are the same percentage as Peyton Manning when he had his biggest ever deal with Indianapolis. Of those 20, 4 have won Super Bowls, and 3 of those 4 are not even on the same deals that they were on when they won. Mahomes is the only one. He's the only one that has won a Super Bowl while being on this massive deal. 5% of the time for these massive deals, it has worked so far. And these deals are all happening in relatively similar time. So everyone is getting 4, 5, 6-year deals at the same time. So they're all going against each other right now. And you could even add 4 to 5 more quarterbacks for ones that are currently on their rookie deals based on, how many quarterbacks in history per, draft hit. Like CJ Stroud, he's obviously going to get a deal soon. One of these current quarterbacks, they're looking to probably get one. So there will be even more that'll be up here. Now, am I saying all of these deals that have been given out will fail? No, not at all. NFL has more talent than ever. The draft is such a valuable event for teams, increasing their talent, and it can be just a giant boost for any team. And if you look back, the draft for all these franchises, it's insanely crucial. I think it's one of the most important just events in terms of a team improving in any sport, but especially in football. And, they each have different organizations, different coaches that can raise their teams to different levels. Some quarterbacks obviously have better organizations and coaches than others. But a good amount of these bets, on the actual quarterback are just not going to hit. And it's going to be very hard for them to. Now, some of them might, but out of these 18, you think all 18 are going to totally check off like, yep, that was worth it. We got to a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, or they totally had a great career. We just weren't able to do it. No. When you invest so much capital into one thing, the odds in terms of risk that it doesn't pay off is pretty high. Unless they are generational. Because if they get injured, obviously, hey, maybe it wasn't necessarily all on their talent, but that's the cost you pay with having so much valued into one position or one player, just one player. I mean, guys that got massive deals, Jordan Love after one season, Trevor Lawrence, massive deal, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Herbert, Tua. There's even more that I'm just forgetting. These are just off the top of my head. Russell Wilson got a huge deal. But just the guys that you're saying, hey, these guys could realistically maybe get us to a Super Bowl or win. Jordan Love, Trevor, Hurts, Kyler, Burrow, Tua, Herbert. The majority of these 20, the high majority, are just not going to hit. And some of them we can already cancel out right now. Like I mentioned with Daniel Jones and Russell Wilson and a few other guys. Mahomes is the highest ever with 22.7% of his team's cap to win a Super Bowl. Like I said, whether it's injury, poor coaching, lack of surrounding talent, or maybe just the actual talent of the quarterback not representing the contract, or all of the above. There are so many things that can go wrong when you pay a quarterback this much money, and there's way too many teams that believe they have the guy and have put the money down, and they're going to pay for it. Just statistically and realistically, it's not going to work. And you could even apply it to this year. The number one team in terms of, hey, who's the favorite to win it all is the Chiefs. Last year, they were not supposed to win it all at all. Their roster got worse. They suffered, obviously, from giving such big deals out, but they won because the players they invested in showed up when it matters. And specifically Mahomes, which I don't think people realize how insane it was that they won because of how massive his deal was, and they were still able to succeed. And that's why they're number one in terms of Super Bowl odds. And while, obviously we can hold out judgment with there is room for other quarterbacks to come out. Right now, Josh Allen looks great, and the Bills obviously are feeling his contract, but they look very good. Maybe Lamar and Burrow come out, but it's only been Mahomes to succeed with this massive deal. And just think of other teams that are doing great right now. Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith, his deal, like we mentioned, similar to the other quarterbacks that have won, but in context, compared to all these other teams, it's pretty good. Steelers have Justin Fields. on that lower deal. The Vikings look, obviously, the best out of any of these teams. They gave up the massive deal for Kirk Cousins and then signed Sam Darnold to a smaller one, and they look like a great team. And if you even look further, the Niners, obviously Brock Purdy, the Bills have Josh Allen, so they have that generational quarterback that we're talking about. And the other teams that are up there, their deals haven't really hit yet. I mean, based on our general evaluation in terms of teams, in the AFC, it's going to have to be either a great team that has a good deal on their rookie or on their lower quarterback, which the only one I can think of would be the Texans, or, like we mentioned with the generational quarterbacks, probably the Chiefs, Bengals, or Bills. And then in the NFC, all the teams you're looking at, Detroit, Jared Goff's deal is not fully affecting them this year because he just signed it. The 49ers, obviously with Purdy. Philadelphia, again, Jalen Hurts just into this deal. It's not fully affecting them yet, but it will for sure. It partly has even a little bit. And then you also have all the teams I mentioned, Minnesota, New Orleans, Seattle. All of them don't have top-tier cap percentage in terms of players right now. And the teams that aren't doing so well that we expected, the Jaguars, invested a lot. Clearly, it may have been a little too much. The Cowboys, they suffered this year. The Dak contract hit, and they paid him again. The Dolphins gave a massive deal out, hadn't won a single playoff game, and they're probably suffering that right now. The Browns gave a guy hadn't played in multiple years, and they're absolutely suffering that deal right now. And the Giants, one season, gave it to him, then it bit him. There's a quarterback problem in the NFL, and a lot of these teams giving out these deals to guys that have hardly had the same success as other ones who have earned these deals. It's breaking the market, combined with them paying other positions similarly high percentage is helping in terms of breaking the market, and a lot of teams and guys and GMs and coaches are going to pay for it. So next time, when maybe going over certain teams, like I will try and also do this more, in terms of looking at it holistically, just think, what is the best rosters that we have? What are the best quarterbacks? And what around them helps me boost it? Meaning coaches, depth, all that stuff. Because this was the biggest issue when it comes to, I think, team building and everything. You better either know that, hey, this guy is capable of doing it and try and win beforehand, make all the decisions and be active like the Eagles. The Eagles could be the only exception because they have the best GM in football, meaning they can draft extremely well and they know what they're doing with trades. So I think a great GM can partly nullify a lot of this stuff. But I encourage you to just go look back at the past Super Bowl winners. I explained a lot of them. It's either generational quarterback, where he either hits it right before doing or having his massive deal, or when he's on a big deal, it's because he's a generational quarterback, or great teams that don't have these massive quarterback deals. If you pay a guy that maybe isn't fully capable of living up to his deal, that's not how you do it. We'll see if these teams realize what mistake they're making with the quarterback problem in the NFL.